Now let's look over some of our parts, the rods, the pistons, the pins, and make sure everything checks out like we think it does. The rod weights were pretty close. The bottom end was all within a gram. The small end needed a little bit. Need to take a gram off to get it within a gram. And there's not much to that. You're just taking a little off with a flat belt sander. You're just gonna go back and forth till you get rid of a gram. That brought the little end into spec. And then you mic the little end. Make sure you're where you think you are. So we're 991, a little over, and the pins were actually a little over 990, so we're good there. You're looking for where you got a foul clearance. So they're going to be good. We'll look at the big ends later. We'll do them like we did the main caps, take them off, make sure everything's clean, even though they look like they are. And we'll check those out, make sure they're on size. And the pistons there was 4 grams between the high and the low. So we're going to get those within a gram. And we're just going to grind a little bit off the tops of the towers here without touching the crown. And it'll be fairly easy to get that off. And then we check the pin bores of each of them. We want a thou clear there too, and we've got it. So that's going to be fairly simple. Now, even though we're within a gram, we're going to get better when we assemble it, because 2 of the pins were half a gram lighter than the other pins. So we'll be putting those with the 2 heaviest pistons. Therefore, the reciprocating will get tightened up somewhat. And the same way with the rods, we're going to take the heaviest big end rod and the lightest big end rod and put them on one throw to kind of even those numbers out better. So we're going to get better as we go on the balance. But, I mean, if you're within a gram anyway, everything's great, right? Now I think we should file fit some rings and see how far. On these rings, you know, you can buy, depending on your pistons, rings that you don't have to file to fit. But on custom pistons like this, you're usually going to be having to file fit. So let's do that. Before you file fit rings, you have to know what you're going to file them to. Your rings should come with some instructions. These are 4.5 thousandths per inch of diameter of bore. So 4.5 thousandths times 4.5 inch bore is 20.25 thousandths. So let's say we go 21 thousandths on the ring gap. You have to go by these numbers because you can't do what somebody else says they did on theirs. You don't know who made their rings or what the materials are, or you have to have something to go by. You don't need much to do this job, just a ring file, something to square the ring up in the bore, feeler gauge. I've got one of those fancy powered ring filers with the dial indicator and everything, but I don't know. It doesn't seem like it gets the job done for me, but there's other brands that are probably better. When I file the rings, They tell you to turn into it, but I can't do that because it tries to lift the ring. Maybe I'm doing it wrong. I mean, they don't want you bringing a burr out here, but you've got to deburr this in the end anyway. So I may be doing it wrong, but I'm just showing you what I do. You only want to file one side, and there's reasons for that. The main reason I like is you don't want to be messing up two sides. If you don't get it straight or whatever, it's not going to work out right. You got to try to hold it square, take it off one side, use this as a guide. Of course, 4.5 bore just about comes off of this. You want to hold an even amount of pressure on the ring because you want to count your revolutions so you'll know if I turn this 10 revolutions, I'm going to remove X amount of thousandths, and it's going to make it easier for you on your way in. So try to hold a constant pressure. Give it 10 turns and let's see what we got. At first this ring wouldn't even go in the bore without overlapping, so I had to file a little bit just to get started. Use your tool, stick your fingers in here and pull the tool up next to the squaring tool, or pull the ring up to the tool. If I started out with 5, how much did I get out of 10 revolutions? It looks like I got 9. So I'm getting 4 thousandths per 10 revolutions. Let's give it some more. Hold it square, push consistently. I try to rub that little burr off of there to try to keep from scratching the wall. Yeah, we should have about 13 anyway, right? And we do. Let's see if we get 14. Yeah, we're doing good. 15, 16, 17, 18, yeah, 19, yeah. 20's kind of, I'm feeling it, but that's fine. It's the book. It only, yeah, that's too tight. Well, I hit that one right on the money. Don't get crazy and go over. So we're fine. 20 barely fits. 21 doesn't like the idea of going in, but 20 fits. So we're where we want to be, right? Now when you get done with the ring, it's going to leave a burr on there where you filed on it. Now don't be afraid. I know you're old. Don't be afraid to use your optivisor so you can see on there where that burr is. You don't want to file on the face of the ring. You're just wanting to take your stone and just barely touch it, watching through your optivisor, and make sure you get it off of there. That's all. You'll get a little bit on the bottom too. That's all you need. Just take your stone, remove it a little bit, getting a good view of it. Want to make sure you're in some good light too. Now the second ring, although this calls for the same amount of gap on the second ring, in reality, some people say that you should give it an extra thou or two because you can get gas trapped in there and cause ring flutter, blah, blah, blah. You and I aren't smart enough to know. But we can just take their advice and give the second ring an extra thou or two, and everybody's going to be happy. The oil rails you won't normally file, but they want you to check. Just make sure you got 15 thousandths on this particular ring. So there's not much to filing rings, and you can get them perfect. I almost ground too much out of that one. Don't do that. That's bad. And if you have you might be able to buy rings that aren't file fit for your application. But most of these stroker motors nowadays, everything's custom. They're custom pistons, and they come with file fit rings. These file fit rings are normally going to be labeled 5 thousandths over the bore. So the ring pack will be called a 4.505. So they're 5 over, and then you file them to fit. But that's all there is to that. It's pretty easy. As you know, these pistons have smaller rings than stock pistons. These are 043, 043, and 3 millimeter oil ring. These lighter rings like this are supposed to be a lower tension than stock rings. So I thought it would be nice to test it and see if that's the case. I think a stock piston this size is around 20 to 22 pounds of pull, and so inquiring minds want to know, right? This is supposed to make it mo better. They are easier to push in, aren't they? You want to check it down on the bottom, because depending on how your engine works, it could be less. Boy, it doesn't feel that low tension to me, does it? We'll see if it really is. If a stock oil ring is 20 to 22 pounds, we'll see what this is. Doesn't feel that light to me, but we'll see. Yeah. What is it? 12, 11? It looks like 12. Whoops. 11, 12. So, if a stock ring is 20 to 22, and if this is 11 to 12, I guess it is lower tension. Just doesn't feel that low to me. But I wanted to know. I've been deburring the inside of the block. How far you want to go with that's up to you. These are usually pretty sharp, so you want to hit them where you won't cut yourself on them. There's a couple little bad spots that I hit. One of the torque plate inner head studs, you couldn't get the adapter wrench on, which wasn't a problem for me because I wasn't during fine assembly. Just pull off the torque plate and grind underneath here and put it back on. But you can't do that at final assembly. You can't get the dirt in your engine like that. So you might want to hit, if you're using a new Cali's block, just for safety, you might want to grind a little bit right out here where the wrench is going to go on the nut. If I was in final assembly, I could have got around it because I have some 12-point nuts that take a half-inch head instead of a 9/16, and so I could have got that out in final assembly if I had to, but you may not have that luxury. So just hit the spots you want to hit, get rid of the sharp edges. But here's what I wanted to show you. The lifter holes are really, really bad burrs. The lifters would not go in, and if you tried to force them in, they would not come out the bottom. Normally you don't get that big a burr on the bottom, but if you stick your finger in here, it is a really, really, really bad burrs. And that's not going to work. You know, those are liable to come off, and that's going to get in your oil system or worse, and you don't want that. So what is the plan of attack? Well, I'm going to try some sandpaper on my finger and try to get that. It's right here where the oil galley comes by the lifter hole. You know, when that's machined, it gets a burr, but these blocks, that wasn't addressed, and so you're going to have to do it. I'm going to try some emery cloth first. It's good on that, and then go around the bottom of the lifter hole here where the lifter will come out the bottom. You know, you've heard all these bad problems about, you know, lifters not turning and flat cams and all that kind of stuff. So you have to kind of pay attention to all this. You don't want to have a cam problem. And before, we are going to be putting all 16 lifters in, marking them, and then turning the cam and making sure that every lifter moves. We should see the lifter rotating. We're going to mark every lifter with the magic marker. We're going to make sure that every lifter in here is turning. But if you've got all these burrs in here, I doubt they're going to turn. So I'm going to try the sandpaper, emery cloth. Then I'm going to come through the oil galley with this flex hone. And then I'm going to come through the top with another flex hone this way. I'm going to get them off of there, but they're really bad. When you feel that, you'll know what I'm talking about. If you don't have a new block, it won't be an issue to you, but we have to go over everything, you know. I was going to put the freeze plugs in. They send you a box of these Dormans with the block. But when I got them out, I went to put them in. You know, they say China and 10-inch tall letters. I don't know. It just rubbed me wrong. So I called Summit and ordered some USA freeze plugs. In our next episode, we're going to do the connecting rods, kind of like we did the mains, where we take the cap off, clean it up, reassemble with proper lube, retorque to proper specs, check the hole size, which will probably be perfect. Then we'll take it back apart, put in bearings, and check our final clearance against what the crankshaft was. So that'll be what we do next.